Hello everyone and welcome. This is the Travel Gene. However, today is more of an objective piece. I'm going to be speaking about the advantages and disadvantages of artificial intelligence in academia. So all you academics out there, all you students out there, this will concern you. And hopefully this will prove an interesting discussion. So today I'm going to be speaking mostly about generative AI, which is actually a subset of AI, or artificial intelligence. A generated artificial intelligence is increasingly prominent in everything that we do, from typical household chores and organizational tasks all the way through to educational research and so forth. And there's been big problems at that level, and which makes sense because any new technology or any new approach will have its warts, will have its growing pains. The difference between AI and generative AI might be important to explain first. AI works with existing data and information, whereas generative AI is more creative and comes up with new ideas, concepts, and approaches. Okay, so that's the difference basically between AI and the subset of Gen AI or generative AI. When we speak about generative AI, we're mostly speaking about things like ChatGPT, Bing, and some of these newer platforms that are being developed at a very, very rapid pace. Okay, it's absolutely amazing. It's overwhelming. When I was on the faculty in Ramaibn Academy, we had this severe problem with generative AI, because many of the people who were writing papers or submitting documents and so forth were relying entirely upon generative AI. And this goes along with paper mills. Paper mills are places in China and India which produce written papers for a fee. And this is very difficult because we need to be able to discern whether or not the creative juices of the academic person in question, the student in question, is actually using their own mind or using generated artificial intelligence to help them along and to produce their own concepts and perspectives, and not relying entirely on this artificial medium, if you would. Okay, so I wanted to speak about AI and some of the challenges and obstacles that it presents, and some of the dangers that it presents, as well as some of the opportunities. Okay, so it's not all negative. There are a number of advancements, and I personally use AI in the development of some of my work to help me conceptualize something in a different way, to see a different way, but it is my work. I do not copy and paste, and this is what a lot of people are unfortunately doing, and there have been repercussions, and I'm going to cover some of that, which comes from a recent article which was just published in the Western Journal. One of the difficulties, or one of the obstacles, or one of the challenges that present itself with AI, with generative AI, or with AI in general, and with, let's say, digital, the internet, is that there has been a reduction in deep thinking, that is books, right? People no longer read. They don't no longer read, and they don't develop deep thinking. So what happens? Well, the brain, the neuroplasticity of the brain is actually changing, okay? People's brains are actually changing. I'm not saying that people are stupider or they're less intelligent, but they are not having that profound deep thinking that is inherent in philosophy and so forth. And I've seen scholars who have said, oh, I don't read anymore, I just rely entirely on the internet. Well, you're basically allowing other people to think for you, and you're getting small sound bites. Okay, so I think that there's a healthy balance. It needs to be struck. You need to read. And as you can see, if you look behind me, this is just a small portion of my library. I'm a very big advocate, a very strong advocate of reading. And not only reading, but when I do read, I highlight, I write in my books. My wife has always condemned me for that, because she comes from a post-communist country, and there they were not allowed to write in their books. And my wife always says, well, you're destroying your book. And I tell her, no, 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 I'm enhancing it. I'm enhancing the book. And actually is good because for me personally, at least personally, on a personal level, I feel like I am reinforcing the deep learning. I'm reinforcing my deep learning by writing things down, by highlighting. By highlighting them, I'm reading them a second time. By writing about them, I'm actually looking at them, at what I'm reading a third time. So it helps to reinforce the deep memory. And I have to say, you know, for my age, I have a very, very good and strong memory. And I attribute that very, very much to reading, extensive and intensive reading, okay? And always challenging myself, trying to read something a little bit harder, okay? Because even, no matter where you are, you're not there's always somebody smarter, there's always somebody stronger, there's always somebody more clever. So you have to realize that, and you have to keep raising the bar and challenging yourself if you want to improve and advance, okay? Another negative aspect, of course, a negative or a positive aspect, depending on how you look at it, is the militarization and weaponization of AI. Unfortunately, much of the AI and generative AI has been pushed toward the military in an effort to enhance and increase lethality in the world today. Okay, so as we can see, drone warfare in Ukraine, drone warfare and rocket launches from the Gaza Strip into Israel and vice versa, has become an everyday phenomenon. Additionally, there is this digital population control, which we witnessed during the COVID-19 pandemic. The event, the COVID-19 event, where governments instituted digital control over people. And this had an extremely negative impact. People said, trust the science, trust the science. Well, can you really trust the science? And let's speak about science, okay? The kind of science that we're speaking about today is emotionally driven, okay? It's panic-induced and fear-induced by governments in order to get people to comply. And I would use the example of COVID-19 as a very pertinent and clear example of this, where people's rights, human rights, were diminished, and the use of fear, a campaign of fear, was imposed upon the human population. So they sacrificed their human rights. And we saw this particularly with regard to militaries around the world. That was a very clear example. Public gatherings were forbidden. Religious ceremonies were stopped. And people quaked and shuddered in fear, and there was misinformation there, and this has been proven and it's been shown, and increasingly we're more aware of the dangers that occurred. And the problem is that now that they say, well, mistakes were made. Well, that's easy, right? That's easy ipso facto, after the fact, to say, well, mistakes were easy. Well, perhaps with more strategic, careful planning, mistakes would not have been made, okay? So we could have avoided those. So I wanted to come to today's topic, and I wanted to speak about AI. And one of the first things I wanted, as I mentioned, was books, okay? The importance of books and reading. And I have a couple of titles that I'd like to offer to you that I think that are worth thinking about and reading. The first one is by Jacob Ward, called The Loop, okay? And this speaks about the dangers of AI, and how AI is creating a world without choices, and how we can fight back against AI, okay? It seems like an uphill battle. It seems like we're salmon swimming upstream, into the mouths of ravenous grizzly bears, but nevertheless, it's worth thinking about. It's worth thinking about before you involve yourself into something very deeply you want to think. And you need to read. You need to read. That's my advice in any event, if you want to stay cognitively aware and you don't want to fall into the trap of this neuroplasticity redevelopment. The second title is called What the Internet is Doing to Our Brains, and is by Nicholas Carr, a very interesting and writer, and I believe he has a Pulitzer Prize, I'm not sure. He's written for the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Atlantic, and Wired. He lives in Colorado. And he's writing about the the changes, the neuroplasticity, the modification of the human brain, the psyche. We are no longer thinking deep thoughts. We are seeking sound bites. That's what the internet is all about. If you don't know something, what do most people do? They Google it, right? And how reliable is Google? Let's get into another topic along the same lines, and that is reason versus emotion. Now, I don't know if you're following the news, if you're watching the news, if you're seeing how things are being developed. There are groups that are organizing certain movements, and they are using this through social media. Quite honestly, organizing revolutions, the color revolutions, the Orange Revolution, the revolution in Tunisia, and so forth. All of these were organized through Facebook and through other social media platforms. Okay, so there is a bit of, quite a bit of psychological manipulation of crowds and crowd movements going on behind the scenes. And some people say, well, that's a conspiracy theory. It is not. It is not a conspiracy theory, and we can see the results quite plainly, quite clearly, okay? Some of the agendas that are being pushed by governments, by specific governments, are being controlled through collusion between governments and social media. If they want to put their message out, if they want people to think in one specific way, then what is a better way than to do it through social media? It used to be television, right? Television, people used to get their ideas from television. Some people still do, unfortunately. And so deep thinking, cognitive reflection, based upon empirical evidence is disappearing in favor of postmodernist individualism and the rights of individuals versus the collective responsibilities. Okay, so we tend to worry about my rights, my little group, my group needs this, that, or the other thing, and we forget about the collective, the larger collective responsibility to society. John F. Kennedy once said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And that's basically, that in a nutshell. Kennedy was a great president, a great politician, and an insightful thinker, and a war hero. Another book is Computer Power and Human Reason, a little bit older, From Judgment to Calculation by Joseph Weizenbaum. And that's also another interesting title that I would recommend to you. It's an earlier title which spoke more about computers, the advent of computers and what computers were doing. So it was an insightful book for its time. Okay, so that's another book that I would highly recommend. If you're interested in understanding better about the evolution of computers to AI and where we're going with deep fake, with many of the issues that we're facing today. Okay, so there's scandalous use of AI in order to discredit other people and to advance very specific political and social agendas. Finally, I come to one that I really like, and it's called Mind Programming, and it includes a free mind training inner talk CD with it. It's from persuasion and brainwashing to self-help and practical metaphysics by Eldon Taylor. Mind Programming. And in this book, it speaks about 21st century technology explosion. And it speaks about the positive developments, but also the more ominous, hidden, and subtle effects that this can have on the social fabric. Okay, so I just recently read a feature, a very interesting, very fascinating feature, very to the point and very pertinent, especially in the academic circles and in academia. This will concern scholars. It'll concern students for the future. It's something we need to think about very deeply, and we need to reflect upon it and change our way of thinking. In academia, when I was working, we were obliged to write approximately 2 journal articles every year, 2 journal articles in major journals, Scopus-related journals, which are very difficult to get into, and they're very expensive. You actually have to pay to be published, right? And if you're a doctor of philosophy, or a recognized doctor or a lecturer like myself, then you fall under what has been referred to as publish or perish. That means if you do not publish, you'll lose your job. Okay, so people are under this stress, and one of the things that makes it very difficult is they're trying to strike that balance between your teaching load, if you have a heavy teaching load, and your research load, because these are two different things. Okay, so one of the possible solutions has been to develop a research unit within universities so that people do nothing but research and they don't do teaching, or they have a very limited teaching load. And that, I think, is a very positive development. Unfortunately, they've gotten into the point where they still maintain this publish or perish. So a professor, such as myself, would have to produce these two articles, and that requires research. And research is not an easy thing. You see, if I were writing an article on AI, I couldn't just simply speak about my own perspectives and ideas, my own insights. I would have to regurgitate the ideas and perspectives of others. It's always good to have insights and perspectives of others, but you should not rely entirely upon them. And unfortunately, when you do produce a journal article, they want at least 15, 20, 30 references from other writers. Okay, so you're not really putting in your thoughts and perspectives and ideas. You're reiterating or repeating what other people have said or what other people think. Okay, so it's not really original thought, and I discourage that. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it's a good movement. It's good to, if you know and if you have read, intensely in your particular domain or in that particular field that you want to present a paper in, then you should have that knowledge ingrained within you. Okay, if you're following up, if you're reading, you don't need to necessarily have 30, 40 different citations, quotations from other authors. Okay, but that unfortunately is the general rule of thumb. So this article that I recently read, it came out on May 14th, just yesterday, by Allison Anton. And I'd like to thank you, Allison Anton, if you're out there, or if you ever happen to hear this video, which I doubt. Thank you very much for this insightful article. And she was speaking about the problems with Wiley. Wiley is a publishing house out of New Jersey, and they've had a lot of scandals and a lot of problems recently. And she also reiterates the point about that stupid phrase that is by woke and leftist institutions, which have infused themselves into higher education with Marxist ideology, and they speak about trust the science, trust the science, trust the science. Well, can you trust the science? Well, today in this postmodernist society we live in, science is far more based upon subjective reasoning and emotions than the earlier empirical research. Okay, so science is not much different than religion in some respects. Okay, religion is based upon faith and belief. Today, science is based upon faith and belief. If we look at the advancement of the emergency use of vaccines, which were used under which were rapidly produced for this COVID event, they were produced basically on faith. They had faith that without testing, they pushed this on to the public, and they said, this is going to work. This is science. This is science. Okay, well, it wasn't science, because science, if you know anything about the scientific method is that you can prove your method, and it can be tested, and it can be retested, and it can be reproduced. And this is the basis of the scientific method. The scientific method was not used. It was not used during the COVID-19 pandemic, okay? And it is not being used during the climate change events. You can take that for what you want, but there's no testing, there's no long-term research, and there is long-term research involved in climate change. I won't say that climate change doesn't exist, but I believe that there's an agenda behind that. Okay, it means nothing because science is a monolithic block of infallible knowledge. It can, even Einstein's theory of relativity has been brought into question with quantum physics. Okay. But now the scourge of false emissions ravaging the academic journal institutions has come to a loggerhead. So Wiley has had to retract a very large number of articles, and they've had to close down or shut down 19 different journals. 19 different journals, and much of this was due to what we call paper mills. Paper mills are those institutions in China and India, largely in third world countries, where people do the writing for an academic for a given price, ranging anywhere from $50 all the way up to $8,000. Okay, so people are paying, and I've seen it in my own faculty. I witnessed it and firsthand this sort of cheating. What happens is you'll have a student who has, let's say he's studying in English, and English is his second language, and he produces a paper that would be similar to something you would write as a doctor of philosophy or something. It would be a very high level of English. There would be no mistakes and no grammatical errors. Everything would be perfect, right? Or alternatively, there may be some very odd and obscure phraseology in there. They may depict something in words that would be like a Google translation. Okay. For example, if we were speaking about macular eye degeneration, they would say visual eyeball wear or something like this. Okay, so which would be a poor translation, a literal translation, and then it sets up a red flag, and you're able to detect that there's been cheating on this. Okay. And believe me, cheating is no good. Cheating is no good. Why? Because cheating, you only cheat yourself. In the long run, you only cheat yourself, okay? And we've seen this. We saw this during the congressional hearings when we had Harvard University, MIT, and Penn State up before the United States Congress, and the people there. Some of the doctors have lost their positions because they actually cheated on their doctoral thesis. They did not write the doctoral thesis themselves. There was plagiarism. Plagiarism is when you use somebody else's work or even your own work and you do not properly cite it. Okay, so plagiarism is a form of cheating. Paper mills are the ultimate form of plagiarism. Okay, that's where you don't actually do any work yourself. Okay. Okay, so charging fees of anywhere from $50,000 to $8,000, and possibly, being generated through AI, Gen AI. You can now go to ChatGPT and you can put in, write me a paper on digital warfare. Write me a paper about digital warfare in 6,000 words and using the following ideas, blah, blah, blah. General ideas, large outline, and it'll spit out something very, very nice. It'll spit out something that's absolutely acceptable. However, this is not original, right? It's not you doing the work. It's not you doing the thinking. Okay, so you're not only cheating the university, the institution that you're working for or with, but you're also cheating yourself, your own mental capacity, your own developmental capacity, and cognitive insights. Okay, so paper mills are often in China, they're often in India, and they create papers on the behalf of all these worried and beleaguered academics who are being pushed under this constant pressure to produce. Now, another thing that's interesting in this respect is increasingly there are a limited number of submissions being given into journals. Okay, so journals are not receiving the number of submissions that they used to receive, and the quality of the journals has dropped. And additionally, I lost my train of thought here for a second because I'm trying to work through several things at the same time. I wonder if that ever happens to you. Does it happen to you as well, where you're thinking of something and you got so many ideas in your head? So there's a lower submission rate. And the other thing that I wanted to say was that the rejection rate is very high. I've had articles rejected on spurious grounds, on unfounded grounds, if you would, or on undeclared grounds. And this is oftentimes is a personality thing. It's a weak personality. Somebody who feels weak in their own personality needs or feels a need to lower other people in order to enhance their own personal satisfaction or self-image. So when you put something in, or they just simply don't like it, or they don't agree with your point of view, they're going to tear it apart. Okay, and I've had that done to me several times, and because my point of view can sometimes differ radically with the standard accepted points of view. And always, remember what's been attributed to Einstein, okay? And he said, question everything, answer nothing. It was Euripides, or I believe it was Euripides maybe who did that, or Pericles. In any event, they said, question everything. Einstein has been attributed with question everything, answer nothing, okay? So always question everything. Question everything. If you are a great thinker, if you want to be a great thinker, if you want to be a really true academic, then you have to question everything and trust nothing. Trust nothing at face value. Okay. Okay. So indeed, Wiley had a scandal back in 2023 when they purchased Hidawi, which was an Egyptian publishing firm. They purchased their open source production with all the articles and everything that they had for an incredible $300 million US. Okay, and it was forced to retract 8,000 articles. 8,000 articles, because it turns out that they were produced through paper mills and AI generation. And this was reported through Retraction Watch. Retraction Watch is a very interesting website which speaks about the viability and the integrity of different publishing houses and various retractions which occur, okay? Moreover, Wiley retracted 11,300 articles within a period of 2 years, over the course of the last 2 years, and closed 4 other journals which were compromised by paper mills as well. So very interesting. Okay, so Wiley is not the only publishing house that had problems, but the most notable case that had it. And as I said, they've closed down 19 different journals since then. They've lost millions of dollars, and there's an estimate they're going to lose about $40 million in the near future, given all of this. Because, who's paying for all this? Where's this money coming from? Well, it's coming from institutions. It's coming from universities. So not only are these people cheating themselves, they're cheating the universities, and they're cheating the publication houses as well, okay? A lot of these things are overpriced. Quite simply, they're overpriced. If you have to pay to publish, and they hold the sword of Damocles over your head, basically, and a knife against your throat, you're going to be forced to publish, and the universities have to cough up the money, because if they want to maintain their standing in the academic world, they need to have publications attributed to their name. There has to be accreditation. You have to be accredited with a specific university. Now, another important point. I've written several chapters this year, and for me, a chapter is a lot of work, right? Chapter is a lot of work, a lot more than an article, right? A simple article. I'm not denigrating an article, but I'm saying a chapter takes a lot more thought, a lot more insight, a lot more research, a lot more work, and they don't count. They do not count for academia. They do not count for publications, okay? Unless, of course, the book is like Scopus Q1, okay, or Scopus Q2, 3, or 4. Then, in that case, they do count. I've heard of cases, I'm personally aware of cases where professors, full professors, who have written 2 or 3 books in a year have been let go because of their inability to publish articles, because they've been concentrating and focusing on publishing books. And in my full books, not just chapters, but full books, and in my personal opinion, I believe that's far more important, that's far more worthy venture than publishing articles that may or may not be AI generated or induced or supported. Okay, so this is an industry that is worth $30 billion a year. Did you catch that? $30 billion a year in publication. Academic journals bearing an outside influence in academia. Everything that we do is based on journals, okay? It's based on journals because we need to publish, we need to teach, we need to have this update and information. Now, the other thing is, okay, so you're going to write a journal. You're going to write a journal. What has not been written? What new idea, new stunning and innovative idea are you going to bring to the world? Well, they are very limited, actually. You know, a lot of this is redo. It's taking the work of other people and putting it in your own words. You take idea A, idea B, and you come up with your own, you put in your own perspectives, and you have idea C. So which includes A and B and your own perspective, which is idea C. So it's actually a redevelopment of earlier concepts, okay? But many things that we learn today are based upon things we've already learned in the past, okay? And that's why it's important to read. It's important to read not only the most recent things, but historical as well, not only to understand where these things came from, but also to understand the evolution of thought, the evolution of ideas, the evolution of concepts and perspectives, okay? Okay, so that was basically it. We're speaking of peer review. Those are the peer-reviewed journals, okay? Peer reviewing means you give your work to somebody else and they judge it. 2 or 3 of them sit back and judge your work, okay? In many cases, or in some cases, these people may not even have solid academic credentials, but they're actually judging you and your work. Okay, so AI, to summarize what we've been speaking about here today. AI has positive contributions to make. It can create an insightful environment and give you positive ideas, help you to develop your own concepts, insights, and ideas. On the other hand, if you rely entirely on AI, you will develop cognitive dissonance. You will not be able to think for yourself adequately if you become reliant completely on AI. Look at the cell phones, for example, what we call GSM in French. If you, how many people know their phone numbers or know their friends' phone numbers? Very few people actually today. If we go to an even simpler example of this technological imposition on our lives, think about the calculator. When I was a very young student, we used to have mathematical exams, and calculators were forbidden. Calculators were forbidden because they felt that we were relying upon the machine in order to do our thinking for us. Now, technology is nothing new, right? We don't want to be Luddites. Those are the people who were against the automatic looms in the 18th century and had revolutions to try and keep looms out of factory mills and to produce clothing and cloth. But on the other hand, you know, and if you look, you had the abacus, right? The abacus, which was the early calculator. Those are those beads that you see on you know, the abacus, which is still sometimes used, which was a very clever development, but it's an early computer, if you would, right? Okay, so we need to have balance. We need to have balance in all things that we do, okay? So if we rely entirely upon technology to do the thinking for us, what's going to happen? We're going to become complacent. We're going to become lazy. So what I would recommend is go out and read a book today. No, seriously, I do believe you need to read. I think it's an important thing that you need to do. And I guess that's all. So stick around. I'll have more insights that may be relevant, may be good, maybe not. Maybe you agree with them, maybe you don't. But they're mine, and I thought that I would share them with you today. Have a great day. I look forward to seeing you again soon.